She died with her eyes wide open, and they never closed. What happened next shattered an entire village. One by one, the guilty fell, cursed by the stare of a girl buried in silence. You won't believe who was the last to fall. Malika Utima was the kind of girl people spoke about with warmth in their voices. In the peaceful village of Neuro, where every morning began with the sound of drums and the smell of roasted maize, Malika stood out, not because she tried, but because she couldn't help it. She was gentle, graceful, and her heart was full of love. When someone was sick, Malika brought them soup and comfort. When children cried, her voice calmed them. Even animals seemed to follow her wherever she walked. People often said Malika was the spirit of light in human form. Her father, old Jamako, was a quiet, humble man who had raised her alone after her mother died. He sold hand-carved walking sticks in the market and was respected by everyone. But even though they were poor, their home was full of laughter and love. Malika never cared about riches or fine clothes. Her joy came from helping others, smiling at strangers, and dancing barefoot during festivals. Her presence made others want to be better, but not everyone felt that way. Her cousin, Kabila, who lived just a few huts away, watched Malika with a different kind of eye. She smiled in public but boiled in silence. Kabila had always wanted to be admired, to be chosen, to be loved like Malika. But no matter how hard she tried, wearing bright dresses, speaking louder than everyone else, she was always second. And the more Malika's light shined, the more Kabila's jealousy grew like fire hidden under ashes. To the village, Kabila was just another young woman. To Malika, she was family. Malika loved her like a sister. She shared her food, invited her to sing, and even gave her one of her only dresses once. But kindness means little to a heart already poisoned by envy. Kabila didn't want Malika's gifts. She wanted Malika's place, and in her dark mind, she believed she could take it, no matter the cost. What hurt Kabila most was how effortlessly Malika was adored. Elders asked for her opinion. Young men lined up just to carry her water pots, and during village events, even the chief noticed her beauty. And worst of all, Malika didn't act proud. She remained humble, which made people love her even more. It was unbearable. One afternoon, Kabila stood behind her hut, crushing dry leaves in her hand, as she watched Malika laugh with a group of children. Her face was calm, but her mind raced. She doesn't deserve all this, Kabila whispered to herself. It should be me. And from that moment, something inside Kabila shifted. Her smile became sharper, her eyes colder. While Malika danced in joy, Kabila plotted in silence. What started as envy was growing into something dangerous, but no one saw it coming. Not the elders, not the villagers, not even Malika herself. Because sometimes the kindest hearts are the easiest targets. And sometimes love and light become the reason someone wants you gone. In the quiet of Nyuro, a storm was forming, and Malika was at the center of it. The village of Nyuro was alive with excitement. It was time for the Grand Harvest Festival, the biggest event of the year. Colorful cloths were hung between palm trees, pots simmered with spicy stews, and the sound of drums echoed across the fields. Warriors polished their shields, dancers rehearsed in the open square, and children raced through the market with wide smiles. Everyone looked forward to the festival, but especially to seeing Malika, the jewel of Nyuro, step into the spotlight. Men from nearby villages came just to catch a glimpse of her. Chiefs offered gifts, hunters bragged about their kills, and traders brought golden bracelets. But Malika paid no mind to the noise. Her heart had quietly chosen one man, Thando Biko, a humble sculptor who carved beauty out of broken wood. He wasn't rich or powerful. His hands were rough, his voice soft, and his hut was small. But he had something rare, truth in his eyes. Malika saw it, and in him, she saw peace. While love blossomed quietly between them, Kabila watched with clenched fists. Her jealousy burned hotter than ever. She stood in front of her mirror, twisting her hair and pressing her lips together in anger. Why her? She spat under her breath. Why should she have everything? Love, respect, attention. And me? I am nothing. Kabila could no longer hide behind polite smiles. Her envy was now a flame that demanded action. She looked at herself and whispered with a cold grin, I will be the flower this village bows to, even if I must dig her grave myself. The plan formed slowly, like poison dripping into a cup. She knew Malika's kindness made her too trusting. She knew the village elders adored Malika but had one weakness, Chief Kunda. Chief Kunda was an aging man, once respected, now desperate to keep his power. His eyes, clouded by years, still lingered on young women, and he had always watched Malika with something more than admiration. He wanted her, not for her spirit, but for her youth. Kabila saw this hunger and fed it. She began visiting the chief at dusk, pretending to seek advice. She wore softer clothes, spoke with sweet lies, and slowly poisoned his mind with words. "She laughs at you, chief," she said one evening. "She calls you an old fool behind your back. She says even a blind dog would be better company." Kunda's pride was struck. His eyes narrowed. Kabila leaned closer. "She'll never love you, but I can help you make her yours, if you trust me." The chief said nothing, but the seed had been planted. Kabila smiled, knowing the storm she had started. And while the village celebrated drums and harvest, shadows began to grow behind the curtains of power. Malika, in her innocence, danced freely, but behind her, betrayal was already moving like a snake in the grass, silent, deadly, and ready to strike. Kabila's heart had turned to stone, and her hunger for power was louder than her conscience. She met Chief Kunda again, this time not with sweet words, but with a deal soaked in wickedness. Her voice was cold and firm. "Give me land, give me gold, make me the second wife of status, and in return, I will give you Malika, even if she refuses." Chief Kunda, already bruised in pride and desperate for one last taste of youth, nodded without hesitation. His wrinkled fingers curled into a fist. If Malika would not come willingly, he would bend her with force, and Kabila would be the rope. The plan began quickly. Just days before the harvest festival, when drums echoed through the village and everyone was busy preparing for celebration, soldiers stormed into old Jamako's hut. They grabbed him without explanation. Villagers watched in shock as he was dragged through the market square, accused of stealing sacks of royal grain meant for the chief's storehouse. Old Jamako shouted his innocence, but no one listened. Kabila stood nearby, pretending to cry, but her eyes sparkled with victory. The punishment was announced before sunset: death by hanging at the village stone, unless Malika agreed to marry Chief Kunda. The news crushed her like a falling tree. Her hands shook, her knees gave way, and the world spun around her. She ran to the chief's palace, begging for her father's life. But the chief sat on his stool like a lion, sipping palm wine, staring at her without emotion. Malika's voice cracked. "He is old enough to be my grandfather." From the shadows, Kabila stepped forward with poison in her smile. "Better a wife than an orphan," she whispered. Malika looked into her cousin's face, searching for mercy. She found none. The next day, the village gathered. They thought it was for the festival, but instead of drums, they heard silence. Instead of dancing, they saw Malika walking slowly toward the palace in a plain white cloth, her eyes hollow, her soul fading. The chief smiled with rotten teeth as he stood beside her, and though the marriage rites were said, no joy was present. People watched in silence, confused, heartbroken, but too scared to speak. Malika had become a bride, not of love, but of blackmail. She didn't cry, not in front of them, but that night, behind the palace walls, she stared at the moon with open eyes that did not blink. She made no sound, but her silence screamed. Her heart beat slower. Something inside her was dying, not her body, her spirit. And Kabila. She stood on the balcony, now draped in gold and wrapped in victory. But what she didn't know was this: you can steal a crown, you can even break a soul, but you cannot silence fate. And Malika's fate had just begun. The wedding day arrived, but it felt more like a funeral. The skies above Neuro were grey, as if the heavens themselves refused to bless the union. Malika walked slowly through the village square, her feet dragging in the dust. There was no music, no laughter, no joy. She wore no white dress, only a plain, colourless cloth. Her hair hung loose, untouched. Her face held no smile. The villagers lined the path in silence. Some lowered their eyes in shame. Others whispered behind their hands. A few laughed, mocking her fall from grace. Thando stood hidden behind the crowd, his chest tight with pain. His fists were clenched, nails digging into his palms. He wanted to run to her, to fight, to scream. But what could a poor sculptor do against the chief and his guards? His eyes filled with tears he couldn't wipe away. His love was being handed to a man she did not choose, and he was powerless. Inside the palace courtyard, the wedding was held without music. The drums did not beat. The dancers did not move. The priest spoke the marriage words quickly, as if trying to end the shame as soon as possible. Chief Kunda stood beside Malika with pride, but she didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. The feast began soon after. Plates of roasted meat, fried fish, and sweet fruits were passed around. Palm wine flowed like a river. Guests forced laughter into the air, trying to pretend all was well, but the joy was false. A shadow sat over the entire gathering. Malika sat at the head table beside the chief, her plate untouched. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She stared into nothing, her fingers frozen in her lap. Her heart had been ripped from her chest, and now she was just a shell, breathing but not alive. Then Kabila stood, dressed in bright fabrics, gold bangles on her wrists, and a twisted smile on her lips. She lifted her calabash of wine high. "To the fall of one star," she shouted, "and the rise of another." A few guests clapped awkwardly. Others looked down, ashamed. Malika didn't flinch. She didn't even blink, but her eyes, those silent, powerful eyes, burned, not with sadness, but with a fury no one saw coming. She held her head high, refusing to shed a single tear in front of her enemies. But inside, a storm was growing. Kabila had taken everything, her love, her peace, her father's safety, her freedom. But she hadn't taken her spirit, not yet. And as the night went on, and the fake smiles stretched across tired faces, Malika sat still, silent and strong. Because sometimes, the loudest scream comes from a woman who says nothing at all. The night grew still, the fake laughter fading as stars scattered across the neuro sky. The palace slowly emptied, but Kabila remained behind. She walked toward Malika with 2 cups in hand, her smile sickeningly sweet. Her voice was soft, almost playful. "A toast between cousins," she said. "For old time's sake." Malika looked at her, silent. Her eyes held no fear, just quiet strength. Slowly, she reached for the cup. She knew Kabila's smile. She knew her poison, but she drank anyway. A slow sip, bitter, sharp, wrong. Kabila's eyes flicked with triumph for a second. Just a second. Minutes passed. Malika's breath grew shallow. Her hands trembled. Then her body stiffened. Her legs gave way. She fell to the floor, arms outstretched like a bird struck mid-flight. Gasps echoed across the courtyard as servants rushed forward. But Malika's eyes, they didn't close. They stared, wide and frozen, like glass windows to something deeper. Her chest stopped rising. Her lips turned pale. But those eyes, unblinking, still and terrifying, locked onto every soul around her. Chief Kunda stumbled back, his cup slipping from his hand. It shattered on the ground, and he collapsed into his throne, pale and shaking. Villagers screamed. Servants fled. Even the guards took a step back. No one dared touch her. Then, with a breath so faint it barely stirred the air, Malika spoke. "My eyes," she whispered, voice barely a thread. "We'll see. You will fall. All of you. One by one." And then silence. Her spirit left, but her eyes, they stayed open, watching, waiting. The courtyard felt colder. The wind shifted, and in the deepest part of the night, the people of Neuro whispered of what they saw. A girl who died wide-eyed, a curse that had been born, a soul too wrong to rest, and the truth hung heavy in the air. Malika might have died, but she was not gone. Not yet. When Malika breathed her last, the village was struck with a heavy silence. The elders gathered, their faces grim as they prepared to close her eyes. A final act of peace, they believed. 3 wise men pressed gently on her eyelids, hoping to calm the restless spirit. But no matter how firmly they tried, her eyes popped open again, stubborn and unyielding, as if guarding secrets no one could understand. They tried again and again, but it was useless. Her eyes refused to close. With heavy hearts, they carried Malika's still body to the oldest part of Neuro, beneath the ancient henge tree. This tree was sacred, a symbol of unity and strength for generations. They buried her there, hoping that the roots and earth would cradle her spirit and bring her peace. But from that day, the village began to change. The air near the henge tree grew cold and heavy. Birds, once lively and sweet, stopped singing in its branches. Even the gentle winds that once danced through Neuro now hesitated, whispering around the grave but never touching it. The village felt different, uneasy, as if Malika's spirit still lingered, restless and watching. Night after night, villagers began to have the same dream. They saw Malika's face, pale and still, but her eyes wide open, piercing through the darkness. She wasn't just a memory or a ghost. She was a warning, a reminder that justice had not been served. Those eyes followed their every move, holding them accountable for the wrongs done. Fear spread quietly through Nauru, like a shadow creeping over the hills. People who had laughed at her fate now looked over their shoulders. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men stayed awake longer, haunted by the gaze of a girl who died but never closed her eyes. Malika's story was no longer just a tragedy. It became a curse whispered by the elders, a secret known by all. Her eyes, wide open in death, were a sign that her spirit was far from finished. The village knew, deep down, that those who had wronged her would pay, and so life in Nauru slowed. The harvests became smaller. The joy faded. Every shadow seemed to hide a warning, because Malika's eyes were always watching, never closing, waiting for the day justice would come, one by one. 1 week after Malika's burial, silence hung over Nauru like a heavy cloak. The villagers tried to go back to normal, pretending not to feel the weight of her eyes, but something had changed. Chief Kunda was the first. He stepped out of his hut one morning, his feet touching nothing but dry, solid ground. Yet, as if pulled by invisible hands, he slipped. His skull cracked against a sharp rock. Blood flowed into the dirt. When his body was found, his eyes were gone, gouged out. Crows circled above, feathers black as guilt. Whispers spread fast. Malika's curse, they said. She's watching. Then, 3 nights later, Kabila's favorite goat, the one she called pride of her home, let out a scream so chilling it froze the air. People rushed out, thinking a thief had come, but what they saw was worse. The goat was on fire, not from a torch, not from lightning, just flames bursting from its body, lighting the night with no reason. Kabila tried to speak, but no sound came. Her lips trembled, her knees gave way. She crawled back inside, eyes wide with fear. That morning, children began whispering in corners of the village. Malika is watching, one said. She sees everything, another added. The elders told them to hush, but the fear had already spread. It was in the eyes of the farmers, in the hands of the drummers, in the backs of the mothers shielding their children. No one wanted to admit what they felt, that Malika's eyes were still open, not just in her grave but in the air, the sky, and their dreams. Thando, now silent and hollow, found refuge in his art. He disappeared from the streets and reappeared only once, carrying a wooden statue carved with shaking hands. It was her, Malika, her eyes wide, carved so sharply they seemed alive, watching anyone who passed. He placed the statue in front of the henge tree. No one dared touch it. That night, no drumming was heard in Nauru. The elders, nervous and tired, gathered and tried to calm the people. They said, "Forget what's happened. Let the past rest." But how can you forget the dead whose eyes never closed? How do you ignore flames without fire, deaths without reason, and children too scared to sleep? The village knew what the elders wouldn't say. Malika's curse had begun, and it would not stop until justice was done. One by one, those who had betrayed Malika began to fall, just as she had warned with her final breath. It started with the village judge, the very man who declared old Jamako guilty without proof. He had laughed that day in court, proud of his power. But one night, as he slept with a roasted yam in his mouth, he began to choke. No one heard his struggle. By morning, he was cold. His eyes were open, bulging in fear, as if he'd seen something, someone, before he died. Next came the guard who had dragged Malika in chains to Chief Kunda's hut. Strong, proud, and cruel. One afternoon, he went out into the fields. Hours passed, then a whole day. Searchers found only his torn shirt and a trail of disturbed grass. His body was never recovered. Some said he was swallowed by the earth. Others whispered he was taken by Malika's spirit. Then the elder who had refused to help Malika when she begged for mercy, he too met a strange end. His body was found hanging upside down from the village gate, as if placed there deliberately, his face twisted in terror, his mouth wide open in a silent scream. The village held no funeral. No one even claimed his body. Fear gripped Nauru like never before. But the worst fate was reserved for Kabila. She, the one who had set the entire plan in motion, began to unravel. At first, it was just chills. Then voices at night, whispers in the dark corners of her hut. Malika's voice, calling her name. "You will be the last." Her hair started falling out in clumps, leaving her scalp bare and raw. She no longer came out in daylight. She stopped eating. Her eyes were wide, red from sleepless nights, always darting around like someone was watching. Because someone was, she tried everything to escape the nightmare. She poured salt at her door, burned sage. She even begged the spirits for forgiveness. But the whispers only grew louder. Each night, they came closer. Soon, soon. In her final madness, she decided to destroy the one place tied to Malika's curse, the henge tree. She wrapped herself in a dark cloak and crept toward it with a torch in hand. She was halfway there, the flame dancing in her grip, when the sky split with a roar. Lightning, bright and fierce, struck the ground just before her feet. She fell backward, screaming, the torch flying from her hand. The villagers, woken by the thunder, came running. They found her shaking, covered in mud, her eyes fixed on the statue of Malika that still stood by the tree. The statue's wooden eyes glowed in the stormlight, silent, wide, and full of judgment. Kabila tried to speak, but no words came. Her mouth opened, but only a gasp escaped. She crawled backward, away from the tree, away from the eyes. But it was too late. The curse was still alive, and Malika's eyes, they were still watching. Under the pale light of the full moon, Thando made his way to the old henge tree. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that wrapped around the soul. He stood there, staring at the earth that held Malika's body. So many nights had passed since she was buried, yet it still felt like she had just left. The pain in his heart never faded, but this night was different. This night, he came not with anger, but with truth. Thando knelt and whispered softly, his voice trembling, "Malika, you were not born to curse anyone. You were born to smile, to love, to dance in the rain. They turned you into something you were never meant to be. You became the punishment for their evil, but it was never your choice." He held out a bunch of fresh white lilies and laid them gently on the grave. They were her favorite. He remembered how she used to wear one behind her ear, always full of joy, before the storm took her life. That night, for the first time in weeks, Thando slept deeply. In his dream, Malika came to him. She wasn't in pain. She wasn't angry. She stood under a tree in a white dress, smiling softly. Her eyes, those eyes that once burned with fury, were finally closed, peaceful, free. When Thando woke up the next morning, he opened his window and paused. For the first time in many days, he heard birds singing. The wind danced through the trees again. The air felt lighter, like a heavy blanket had finally been lifted from the village of Nyoro. People stepped out of their homes, blinking at the brightness of the sun. Children laughed. Flowers swayed in the breeze. It was as if the curse had faded, as if Malika had finally found rest. But not for Kabila. While the village bloomed, she was found crawling near the riverbank, her clothes torn, her body covered in dirt. Her hair was gone, her hands bruised, and she was muttering the same name over and over again. Malika, Malika. The woman who once walked with pride, who held gold in one hand and power in the other, was now a shadow of herself. Her wealth had vanished. Her lands were taken. Her servants had fled. And worst of all, her eyes were wide open, but she could see nothing. She was blind. People stared at her, not with pity, but with fear. Some said it was justice. Others called it the final touch of Malika's spirit. Kabila no longer spoke clearly. She no longer remembered who she was. All that remained was her broken voice, whispering a name she could never forget. And so, the curse ended, not in fire, not in blood, but in truth. A truth spoken by love. A truth that gave peace to a restless soul and destroyed the one who caused her pain. Malika Otima died with her eyes wide open, not from hate, but from a deep need for truth. She did not die to curse anyone. She did not die to scare the village. She died because those around her turned their backs when she needed them most. And so, her eyes remained open, not to haunt, but to witness what would come after. She didn't rise from the grave. She didn't return to burn down homes or scream into the night. Malika never wanted revenge. All she ever wanted was justice, for herself, for Jamako, for every innocent person crushed by lies. And in death, she became something more powerful than anger. She became Neuro's silent watcher, a guardian of truth. The village never forgot what happened. They couldn't. Even the winds whispered her name, and the trees seemed to lean in when stories of Malika were told. Children grew up hearing tales of her wide, unblinking eyes, how they seemed to look straight into your soul. Elders told them, "Speak only truth beneath the henge tree, for Malika listens." Every year, on the night of her death, the people of Nyoro walk in silence to the base of the henge tree. Each family places a candle in the earth, lighting the ground in a soft golden glow. The flames flicker in the dark, dancing like spirits. Some bring white lilies, others bring quiet prayers, but all come with one thought: to honor the girl whose death woke the conscience of a village. And every year, they remember the moment her eyes finally closed. It didn't happen right after her burial. It didn't happen when the curse began. Her eyes only closed when the truth was fully known, when the lies had ended, when the last person who betrayed her faced the weight of their actions. Only then did peace find her face. Still, stories say she watches, not in anger, but in silence. A quiet presence, like the wind that brushes your cheek, or the feeling of being watched when no one's around. People who lie or hurt others near the henge tree sometimes wake at night, sweating, convinced they saw her, eyes wide, not blinking. So now, if someone passes the tree, they speak kindly, they tell the truth, they lower their voice and respect the earth. Because everyone in Nauru knows one thing for sure: the eyes of the dead may close, but the spirit that seeks justice never truly rests. And somewhere, somehow, Malika still sees. So if you ever sit beneath an old tree, alone, and feel a strange breeze, or a chill on your neck, don't be afraid. Just be honest. Be kind, because Malika Otima didn't die for nothing. She watches, not to punish, but to protect. If this story touched your heart, then pause for a moment and think. Think about all the people who are judged unfairly, silenced when they speak, and forgotten when they suffer. Think about the Malikas of the world, the quiet souls who carry pain with grace, who ask for nothing but truth, and who stand tall even when the world tries to crush them. Malika didn't rise to destroy. She rose to remind us that truth always comes to light, that silence doesn't mean weakness, and that even after death, the eyes of the innocent still watch, hoping that we will do better, be better, and choose kindness. So if you have ever felt unseen, unheard, betrayed, know this: your story matters, your voice matters. Justice may delay, but it never forgets. Let this tale be a light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of cruelty, there is power in holding on to what's right, and that somewhere out there, Malika's spirit watches over those who cannot speak for themselves. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs a reminder that they are not alone, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, always speak the truth, always stand for the weak, and never forget, the eyes of the just are never truly closed.